Hello there. Very good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Politics. I'm your host, Layne, and of course, this evening, this Tuesday evening, the first day of the month of June, we have so many things to discuss, and I have two guests with me this evening: the Honorable Bishop Juan Edghill, Minister of Public Works, and a Member of Parliament, Sanjeev Datadin. Gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Eddie, and good evening, Sanjeev. Good evening to all the viewers and listeners.
Good evening, Ed. Good evening, Minister. Good evening to your viewers and listeners as well.
Well, guess what? We had a quite an interesting maybe 36 to 48 hours in Guyana. Of course, we know that as a result of nature, there are quite a number of areas across our country that are flooded, and of course, Bishop Juan Edghill, the Minister of Public Works, who has been one of the persons leading the government's response. We will deal with that matter a little later as we go down in the program. Um, and of course, we had Paul Slow clutching at straws. After being charged for that $10 million that he and others collected on the false pretense from the Guyana police force, claiming that they were fixing standing orders, he came out with some unsubstantiated claims because he failed to produce any evidence. And also, the letter writer was out again in full force. This time, he's calling on the same international community that he and his gang were trying to quote unquote kick out of Guyana. He's now begging them every single day for everything that happens. If the weather seems to be too cloudy, Harmon is calling on the international community to look into it. And of course, big this afternoon, that motion at the Ghana Elections Commission to get rid of the riggers from there, Keith Lowenfield and the others who attempted to rig the elections. So, gentlemen, I think we have quite a packed program this evening, quite a number of things to talk about. And I want to start with the motion that was tabled by the government commissioners at the Guyana Elections Commission this afternoon, calling or initiating, so to speak, the process to have Keith Lowenfield, Roxanne Myers, and of course the gentleman from Region 4, the returning officer from Region 4, who engineered the rigging, if you want, from the onset, be removed from GCOM to cleanse that body that is supposed to be a partisan body, an impartial body that was supposed to be professional, especially the secretariat. We understand that the commission is made up of politicians, well, representatives of political parties on both sides, but the secretariat itself uh, is expected to be professional. Sanjeev, from a legal perspective, I wanted to start with you before I bring in Bishop. I know Bishop is very passionate about this. He hinted at me before the program started. This is the thing that I enjoy the most to talk about. But I think he was using some reverse psychology on me there, so I'm going to bring him in after you. Let us deal with the legal aspect of this here first and foremost.
Well, Ed, we all witnessed what happened after the March elections, March 2nd. We all saw what happened and what transpired from then. We all saw the players, we all saw the events, we all saw the attitude and the level to which people were willing to take steps to defeat the will of the Guyanese electorate and the will of every voter in this country. The way it works is this. GCOM, as you correctly said, it's a constitutional body, and they're governed by the Constitution, and there is, of course, a statute. So there is, of course, the commission, which is the upper level. The commission is made up of the chairperson and 6 members, 3 from each side of the political divide: 3 government, 3 opposition. What happens below them is the secretariat. The secretariat starts with the CEO and chief elections officer, then the deputy chief elections officer, and then, of course, there are the various ROs, the returning officers for each region. Now, having regard to what transpired at the last election, following the election day and the shenanigans of the 5 months, I think it is about time that the commission take a decision about the actions of the secretariat and their employees. And it is important that we recognize that in that motion being tabled, it is now for the commission itself to decide on whether these persons should continue in the employ and be paid by the government and by the state to perform functions which they so poorly performed in the 5 months that followed the March elections. We cannot escape what they did. Much of it is subject to court proceedings now and criminal charges, but we cannot escape that if we are to move forward, if the nation is to move forward, we have to have local government elections. We're going to have national elections in 4 years, 5 years from now. These things have to be addressed. We can't go with the same horses that ran that race. We know how those horses run, and that does not work. That does not work for democracy. That does not work for the people of Guyana. Now, the motion that was tabled is the first step. The motion is tabled. We saw, I had the benefit of one of the commissioners showing to me something that was made public, which is a letter written by the chairwoman, Ms. Claudette Singh. She has written to Lowenfield, Mingo, and Myers, and given them 14 days, they have until the 15th of June, to show cause why they should not be dismissed with immediate effect. So they now have to show a reason why they should remain in the positions and in the jobs that they did. We all know what transpired, and we all know what precipitated such a motion. Now, this is the Elections Commission, in my view, getting itself organized, getting itself back onto the footing that it should always have, and the footing that it had had before, hitherto, these events. And we need to bring back public confidence. The public has no confidence in these individuals, and we should have persons who enjoy the confidence of the public. So as a matter of legality, what has happened now is the first step towards the commission deliberating upon removing those 3 people. So the region, Mingo for Region 4, the returning officer, Lowenfield as the CEO, and Ms. Myers as the DCEO. That process is now in train, depending on the responses that they provide to the commission. It is, as the next step would be, that once the responses are received, it will be debated by the members of the commission, where everyone will presumably have their say, and then we have a vote. And whatever is the vote, then that's the way that those persons are going to be handled and addressed by the commission.
Thanks, Sanjeev. Bishop, I bring you in here. I think the battles that the Guyanese people would have fought over that 5-month period, and I think it's something that we will not forget. And I think this step is really something that a lot of people have been looking forward to see that the guys who think that they could have fooled and robbed an entire nation thought somehow that they would have remained there, and Guyanese people were certainly getting agitated and were concerned about this. Bishop, this is completely a step in the right direction.
Well, Ed, thanks for having me on your program tonight. And if I could start where Sanjay left off, let us ensure that when they take the vote at the commission, that Myers, Mingo, nor Lowenfield would be counting those votes, because we wouldn't be going anywhere in a hurry. Thank God they would not be in charge of that process, because whenever it comes to votes and counting of votes, those 3 individuals should be nowhere in the picture. I would have thought that Lowenfield and Myers and Mingo would have done the decent thing and quit and walk away. They know there is no future for them. at GCOM. There is not one thread of credibility that remains with them. No one trusts them. I don't even think supporters of the APNU AFC trust them. They should have done the decent thing and leave. But I think the news of today brought some hope again that due process is the way to go. And my colleague, Mr. Datadin, just explained to us how that process will go. And the patience that was exercised by the Guyanese people over the 5 months will now pay off, because we will exercise some more patience, give them the chance to respond, the deliberations, and then the decision. This will not be 5 months. I anticipate there's going to be some legal maneuvering, and because it would appear that that is the way this disgraced APNU, AFC, and their cohorts plan to go, to use the judicial system to frustrate and continually frustrate the will of the people. But the bottom line is we need to have GCOM cleaned up. And may I say, I believe that Myers, Lowenfield, and Mingo are just the icing on the cake, because they had to have the collaborators at various levels to facilitate this kind of a wickedness that they were hoping to foist upon the people of Guyana. And we must get right down to the bottom to every one of them. We must have a machinery in this country that we have confidence in. This wickedness about rigging of elections must not be on the discussion table after now. You know what we should be talking about tonight is analysts and people who have looked at Guyana saying that she is properly positioned for take off. Her developmental objectives are in sight, and Guyana is getting ready to move in the right direction with all of the challenges that we've been having, even with the floods and what other things that people might want to throw in the equation. There is hope for Guyana in terms of our prosperity and our development. We should be talking about Guyana is in safe hands. The great job that President Ali is doing with his visionary, proactive leadership in providing the kind of atmosphere for the inclusion of all people. And here it is tonight. We have to be talking about these miscreants or culprits, whichever term might be more appropriate, who sought to steal a government and to steal a country and to interfere with our prospering democracy. But thank God, due process is going to be followed. We have good faith that when the matter is at the level of the Commission for Debate and Decision, that we will have good action, fairness, and ultimately cleaning up GCOM. I could hear the thousands of Guyanese, or the tens of thousands of Guyanese who are chanting, and even some of them who are listening to this program. Hooray, hooray, let's clean up GCOM. Let's get rid of the riggers. Let's get an environment where we could have free and fair elections. This is something we have fought for. You know, I think about those hundreds of volunteers who guard those ballot boxes to ensure that they weren't tampered with to get into the recount. I think about those almost 2,000 PPP polling agents and polling agents from all those other political parties who work from 4:35 a.m. on election day way into 11 and 12 o'clock at night to ensure the integrity of the process is preserved. And then then to find out that after all their hard work, these riggers based in the Secretariat sought to manipulate the results of the elections and to give victory to the losers. And we were happy that we were able to rescue the situation. And those who sought to facilitate it, those who superintended over that kind of a wickedness, must be made to pay the price. So I can understand the relief and the satisfaction that is in the corridors of the various places where discussions are taking place. And Eddie, no doubt tonight, our viewers and listeners are relieved that at least the motion for the removal have been tabled. Of course, we look forward for their trial in the court for the criminal charges that are laid against them. They can defend their criminal actions in the court, and they can have the best lawyers to defend them. But that doesn't stop GCOM from taking action simultaneously on their behavior and dealing with this matter administratively. And I'm pleased that we are going in that direction.
But you see, the issue is, um, but what we'll hear very soon the cries of their defenders, and that is their defenders, the Harmons and the Christopher Jones and the Alis and the others, jumping in the streets, shouting from the rooftops about Afro-Guyanese being attacked. Because this is their line. This is what you will hear. They're not concerned about the criminal conduct of these people. They're not concerned about what the actions of the. I mean, they are the handlers in any case, but they are not concerned with the actions of these people. They how it will destroy or impact Ghana's image internationally. But what they want to say to us, and I know what I'm saying this, because very soon we will hear, and we saw the coordinated approach yesterday when Paul Slow finished with his lies. Apparently, Harman had a statement prepared. So as soon as Paul Slow was finished, he was able to jump up with a statement. And that shows how coordinated, and we're coming to that. But the same cry you will hear the cry from them about Afro-Guyanese being attacked. These are three persons who were involved in criminal conduct against a nation. So, like both of you and like the rest, and I'm looking at the comments here on social media, people are happy. People are happy that the riggers, those who sought to steal their right, are being dealt with. And apart from the criminal charges against them, now the Ghana Elections Commission, their employer, are moving to have them removed from the positions that they hold there so that we can have people with integrity holding those positions. And I mentioned the cry and the Harman and so on because I wanted to move to the next issue of Paul Slow. You could imagine, and I think Guyanese people are smart enough, Bishop and Sanjeev. I looked at this man chronicling from September and from August of last year, and he chronicled off about how many times the president called him and plans to set up meeting with the vice president and implicating the attorney general and all sorts of people. And he ended his presentation by saying that he keep repeating every time he received these calls and these requests that he will not compromise his integrity. Why wait until you're before the courts for $10 million? Why you didn't, if you were a person with integrity and you wanted to preserve your integrity, from the very first instance you received those calls, you would have come out to the public to say the president is trying to influence me, or the attorney general is trying to influence me, or the government is trying to influence me. Why wait until you were pulled before the courts by SOKU for taking $10 million, you and others, from the Guyana Police Force, and you didn't do any work? So Paul Sloan's integrity we have to deal with, Bishop. I'll start with you here.
Well, Eddie, let's walk this through smoothly. Who is Paul Slow? Apart from being an ex-senior police officer, and I'm told that he was very much admired by other ranks in his style of leadership and discipline, which is a good thing. But Paul Slow came out with his political hat since 2011, 2012, but more forcefully in 2015. Paul Slow's political hat was out there. So we are dealing here with a politician, not the policeman Paul Slow. We're dealing here with a politician Paul Slow. Paul Slow was part of that group that campaigned for the re-election of David Granger. Paul Slow was part of that machinery, that apparatus, providing support publicly, clandestinely, and in other ways, pulling people together for the support of David Granger. So Paul Slow would have been a beneficiary of an APNU AFC victory at the 2020 polls had they won. Now it is clear they lost the elections. And everything that happened, excuse me, the PPPC took office and Paul Slow allegedly, like he's saying now, was called by the president to influence him in a particular way and interfere with his independence as a constitutional body. Who would believe that politician Paul Slow would not move from day one to declare that the president is unfit for office because he's trying to influence an independent constitutional body? Who would believe that now? A desperate cabal of which Paul Slow gives succor to and supported. They would have used every instance, anything, even manufacturing lies and controversies for the removal of the Finale administration. He never did. Now that he's in the public's eye with two very serious charges, he's now trying to put his politics in perspective by saying, you know, the president was trying to influence me. I don't believe a word of it. When Simona Brown tried to influence the Service Commission and Harman tried to influence the Police Service Commission, you know what we did? We took the matter to court. Why didn't Paul Slow take the matter to court how much months ago, indicating that the president is interfering with his independence? Why didn't do that? So nobody believes Paul Slow now. This is not the policeman in a professional way that commanded ranks and enforced discipline that people would like to talk about. And I'm sure that there are good stories about that coming out from the police force and people who served under Paul Slow. But we're dealing here with Paul Slow, the political animal who wanted an APNU AFC victory. A Paul Slow who became disaffected because of their loss. A Paul Slow who is trying to frustrate the work and the progress of the PPPC administration. A Paul Slow whose political ambition will make him not willing to cooperate with the current administration. What hogwash are we getting now? Who will believe this? If you got Sherrod Duncan, Christopher Jones, Gavin Matthews, and all of those who are part of the manufacturing industry, the only product that they manufacture is controversy, narratives, and lies. He could have used outlets a long time ago. He has all of his friendly people in the media where he could have leaked stories to them. The president is trying to interfere with my independence. None of that was done. You know why it wasn't done? Because it is not true. What is being said now is merely a defense, a smoke screen that you're trying to put up to keep your image intact, to defend the position, and to throw shade at the current administration. And nobody's going to buy that story. We know how human beings behave. We know human beings behave. And this is desperation at its best. So the narratives that are being spun, aided and abetted by his friends and colleagues who he worked for and supported and would have been a beneficiary of their win, we understand the incestuousness of what is taking place, but it won't stand. It won't stand. And I'm happy that the world is seeing and watching. I'm happy.
And I'll bring you in just a bit, Sanjeev. But importantly, we know the PNC, we know the APNU AFC. If you go to them now and you tell them that the PPP is responsible for the heavy rainfall, Harman and his gang will jump to the front to use that. They're not going to sit a year with Paul Slow, who openly said in 2015 that he wanted a change in government, that he threw his support behind the APNU AFC, who we knew was the security advisor, was in charge of security during the 2020 campaign for the APNU AFC, would have been sitting there with almost, what, 9 months with this information and not using it like you rightly said, Bishop. And but before I bring you in, Sanjeev, I wanted to make the point, and Bishop, you touched on it. What is sad is that you have this hypocritical lunatic in Harman now coming out about you trying to influence when the man signed a letter. There is no evidence of the president doing this. This is just Paul for trying to deflect from the charges against him, the sexual assault charge and the charge of them collecting $10 million from the police force. There is a letter circulating with evidence of Harman signing a letter saying that the president, then President Granger, wanted um, to put a halt to promotions in the police force. And he's coming out now to say the president is unfit for public office. I don't even want to say that Harman is unfit for public office. Harman is downright unfit for anything, as far as I'm concerned. Sanjeev.
Ed, the Paul Slow issue is quite interesting because for those of us who have interactions with the police force frequently, and most lawyers do, it's part of your job, will realize that under the last administration, there was a concerted change within the police force. And in my view, my humble view, there were attempts to align the force in accordance with the then political masters and their wishes. It was a very disturbing thing. It started, for example, with various social media postings that showed since 2015, Mr. Slow being associated with APNU AFC, whether he was providing security advice or whether he was simply present at rallies. But that was on social media. And he's entitled to do that. He was a police officer before. At that time, he's free to do so. Then there was this very strange thing that a lot of people have forgotten about. There was this strange inquiry. A commission of inquiry was started about a plot to assassinate Mr. Granger at the time he was president. And there was this very weird inquiry that took place. I was involved, I was there a lot of the time because former Chief Justice Ian Chang was one of the lawyers. He had retired at the time. As a lawyer, he was involved in those proceedings, and I would accompany him from time to time, just for the sake of accompanying him. But there were interesting things about this whole thing. This whole plot came from, to say it was a he say, she say story is putting it highly. But it was a whole strange issue that came about because somebody told a taxi man, and a taxi man told somebody else. I can't give you the exact details. The long and short of what it was is they alleged that somebody was given bail, and the then commissioner, Mr. Silal, had indicated that that bail should be given to the gentleman because there wasn't any sort of evidence. This was a whole circus. That's not the important part of what I'm trying to convey. So a commission of inquiry was done. People weren't charged with it. All of that didn't happen. A commission of inquiry. Now, if somebody's done something wrong, if they've committed a criminal act, done anything, then what you really should be doing is going to the courts. That didn't happen. And a sole commissioner to that commission of inquiry was appointed. That person was Paul Slow. That was about 2017, 2016, 2017, it would have been about. And he had to produce a report. We don't yet know. I don't know that that report has ever been made public. But what was stated in the media at the time and what was stated in the press was on the basis of those recommendations, there was going to be a major shakeup in the Guyana police force. What were the things that happened? There were issues with many people in major crimes being moved. Some of them were put into outlying stations across the river at La Grange, Kitty Police Station. Then I think Mr. Blanham might have been an acting crime chief. He was sent out of the county, out of pretty much on the outskirts of where the majority of people live. There were all those things that took place based on this commission of inquiry, which is supposedly concerned with there was a plot to kill Mr. Granger. Now, I understand if there's a plot to kill anybody, it's a serious issue. And if you suspect so, you should have a criminal trial. But that was then about a year later, a few months later, then Mr. Slow was named to be the chairman of the Police Service Commission. And then there was, in the interim to that, and the commission getting organized, there was the letter from Harman that was made public about the president directing that the commission shouldn't at that stage do any forward movement, promote anyone or anything. And we all thought at the time, looking at it, that what was happening, in fact, was an orchestrated plan. Until you got a commission that you thought was sympathetic or favorable to you, you were going to hold off all promotions. And while you hold off all those promotions, you get yourself an excuse to get a commission in place. When that commission comes in, then the only people who would be promoted would be the people that have your blessing. Essentially, what it was going to do was to undermine the Guyana police force in a very, very, very structured way. So there were all these things that happened. Now, no one is saying, no one points a direct finger that Mr. Paul Slow was involved in this or Mr. Paul Slow did anything. That's not the issue. The issue is the events that are going on and who are the persons that are involved in those events. It was regrettable if indeed that was what was being done, and it was a travesty if a government were to try to do something like that to an institution like the police force, which should remain independent. But following that, we then had the police, Mr. Slow as the chairman. Then we did have, there were proceedings filed by an opposition member, an MP, Mr. Mahipal. Those proceedings involved issues to do with the Police Service Commission. The attorneys are all opposition MPs. The involvement in the commissions in that regard is improper. I don't think that as a matter of law, commissions should be independent and they should demonstrate their independence. They must demonstrate to the public that they're independent, and they shouldn't retain lawyers that may be perceived to be biased, and they shouldn't join actions against the government. If they had a problem with what was being complained about and about the statute as it relates to budgets and whatever, they should file it on their own. They have to go it alone. That's how you establish independence. But all of these things are going on, and Mr. Paul Slow is sitting where he was at the Police Service Commission as chairman. And then all of a sudden, we realize that Mr. Paul Slow was given a contract of about $10 million to rewrite standing orders for the Guyana Police Force. He can't do that. He can't be the chairman of the Public Service Commission and then write the standing orders for the police force. And if you go by media reports, apparently those have been done or had been done recently or some time ago. And although payment has been made for these standing orders, they have not been done. As far as Mr. Paul Slow is concerned and his involvement, it wasn't done. And then there's a really terrible story that seems to take second fiddle in all of this. But there is a complaint about sexual misconduct. There is a complaint from a woman police officer that apparently wasn't addressed properly by the force, and it's not being addressed properly. But there is a complaint about a sexual assault, which is a serious thing. I'm surprised that Ed, your friends at GHRA, don't see it fit to comment about these things. But these things are horrible things. There are all these organizations that are happy to comment about these things.
How do
But
how
Ed,
do you
your
Sanjay,
friends at GHRA are letting us down here.
how do
They're
you
usually
expect
quick to.
the PNC to how do you expect the PNC to comment on this? The GHRA is apparently operating out
Yeah,
of
but
Commerce Way.
they're always so quick on the draw when you say anything, Ed. They're always up to say it. I don't notice them
And
do that.
where is Red Thread? Where is Red
All
Thread in
these
all of this?
organizations that we hear about, and they're not saying anything. And this woman said that this thing has happened, and they wouldn't do anything about it, and they wouldn't speak up. That procedures should be followed. Who were the people that knew? What happened? Why didn't something happen before? But when you look at it now, and you have these investigations being done, there are criminal charges that were laid in going by what's published in the press. He's been charged about the $10 million paid to him for rewriting the rules, the standing orders. And then he comes about something that happened so long ago, supposedly, where he met with His Excellency, Dr. Ali, and he's trying to say these things. Now, what he should realize is this, and what is important to note is this. He may wish to build this fantasy of events because he wants to distract. But the two things don't meet. He was paid to do a job. He is alleged to have sexually assaulted someone. Those two things don't meet anything of what he's alleging about whether or not the president is attempting to influence the Guyana police force. They are unrelated. And he should have, when and when this would have happened since last year, apparently, and when these things should have happened, he should have gone public. He should have gone and sought his lawyer's advice and take proceedings. He should have written letters and say, listen, you know what, Mr. President, I think you're out of line, and we can't have these conversations. There is no documentation. Now he wants to say about who's called who when. But you see, the thing about calls is nobody's there to say who said what on those calls. But now that you've found yourself before a court, you want to blame from the top, the very top, His Excellency come down. And you're going to try to blame everyone. But it don't relate to the two things that you were there. You know the old saying about a cow going to a slaughterhouse. Everything goes. And this is what is happening. And people should realize His Excellency put out a very clear statement about what transpired and that he denied having any involvement. You notice every other event he's trying to say that the Attorney General was trying to speak to him. He's the head of the Police Service Commission. I'm not surprised that the Attorney General would have had conversation with him. But the Attorney General was very clear. His assertion that he was trying to have some backdoor access or try to resolve something like that never took place. You notice now how all these things come about. He could have done this when it happened. He appears to have a political affiliation. And even if he doesn't have a political affiliation, the job that he holds, he should address it. He should have addressed it when it happens. Now, he's got to face these charges. There is evidence, and if you go by what's published in the press, there is evidence to support both of these allegations. He'll have his day in court. And all of these things that he say, and all of these things about who's trying to influence him, they don't matter to those charges, and they have no relevance to those charges, and we shouldn't be distracted. But they are mere lies. The people and the other persons involved have put that to rest, that everything he's saying is not true. Now, how could you have a man like that with so much controversy head the Police Service Commission? How could that continue? That is untenable. There should be no person who has such controversy. Controversy with the Attorney General, the head of state, a fellow officer, accountability for money. How could you head the Police Service Commission that way? You have to promote people. How would people look up to you? I don't understand why he thinks that these stories are any assistance.
And Bishop, I think we already established the timing of this. Why now and not before? But clearly, the behavior, the utterances of him clearly shows that he's making the whole issue a political issue, somehow to give the impression that because he didn't buckle to quote unquote pressure from the government and from the president, and I see he tried to implicate the vice president, he tried to implicate a private citizen, he also tried to implicate the attorney general, that somehow because he didn't buckle to those pressures, he is now being implicated in this whole issue regarding the $10 million. And forget all of this. This is a man who's talking about integrity and on all sorts of things. You being the head of a constitutional body that has disciplinary powers over the police force, putting yourself up to execute a contract for the same force, what will happen? What will happen if Bishop Edghill decides he wants to build the Demerara Harbour Bridge and to compete with the other contractors? What will happen? He who presides over the sector. And this is so he can talk about integrity. I don't know how can you put Paul Slow and integrity in the same line? You listen to this guy, he has always been like this. Even while he was a commander, he's always painted himself. I was looking and I was reading him when he was retiring, talking about so many other people can't match him. He's about self-praise, and he has his gang with him, Harmon and the others. The fact of the matter is, though, I believe that outside of him facing those criminal charges, one for the $10 million and the other for sexual assault, and outside of the president and the attorney general responding to him, his allegations against these individuals, His Excellency the head of state, as well as the attorney general and the vice president, he should be dealt with outside of that. He should be made to prove those claims that he's making. Because you can't just get up one day and decide you're going to disparage people, that you're going to attack and assassinate their character, and you think it's okay to walk away. He should be held accountable. That's the reality. And the bandwagonists in Harmon and the others, and like I said recently, Sanjeev and Bishop, Harmon is back to the pen pal days. He's writing letter all day. This man now is jumping everything, every single thing. If Harmon gets up late in the morning, he wants the international community to intervene. The same international community that they had Karen Cummings going to the Ashman's building to chase, and him not wanting to meet with the Canadian High Commissioner, and him not wanting to meet with diplomats, and accusing them of throwing out the APNU AFC from office. He is now running to them for everything. For every single thing, he's running to them. This is the kind of hypocrite you have to deal with in Harmon.
But Eddie, the term sanctimonious gangster comes to mind again.
But he's the utensil, remember, he's the utensil. He's not the sanctimonious gangster.
When Mr. Slow goes before the magistrate to answer for the $10 million case, he can't tell the magistrate the president call you and ask you to do something. The question he has to answer is, why did you receive this money? Did you do the work? Were you entitled to that job? Was this a proper contract? Was it properly tendered? Did you receive money under false pretense? If an Ali, Barajagdio, Sanjeev Datadin, Juan Edghill, in that discussion, is you the check you received, the money, the contract? You have to answer that in court. What he's trying to do is to go to the court of public opinion. I go into jail because of Jagdeo and Air Funds and Datadin and Edghill and the PPP. When it is wrongs that are being corrected. But you see, the policeman with the lunch money or the food money, the policeman with the standing orders money showed what was really taking place under the APNU AFC. It was a hustle in every way. Everybody was on a hustle. A birth certificate was a hustle. A passport was a hustle. Lunch was a hustle. So when you try to streamline governance, the contractors have to be paying big to the boys to get a job. You meet people now, they say, oh, minister, not even one worker get under the APNU AFC. They are breathing a sigh of relief that there is some fairness and openness and opportunities presenting themselves. What is taking place here? All right. If the president tried to influence Paul Slow, and that is your defense, what were the other people who joined with you with this standing orders matter that is also charged? What the president tried to do to them? What the president was hoping that they will do? So I don't understand his arguments and his logic. Is the deflating of an image that was presented to the public that these men are upright and they're disciplined and they have a certain pedigree and they're untouchables and these are the epitome of decency and righteousness. But they were caught with their hands in the cookies jar. Yes. And if you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar, you have to stand up before somebody and explain why your hand was in the cookie jar. What you plan to do with the cookies that you were taking out. How come you end up in the cookie jar? Who opened the jar for you to get in the cookie jar? You have to tell that to a magistrate. So a press conference don't try a criminal charge. The lady that says you use your office to try to get at me sexually or try to assault me sexually, and you have to use your position of influence to deter if I get promoted or don't get promoted if I didn't want to pay you in flesh. If that is how the story went, you have to go before a magistrate and says, I never saw this lady, she lied, or this is what happened, or this is what transpired. It's not Ali that you have to go after. So your press conference, your utterings in the media is to do damage control. But that don't change the fact that you have to stand up in the box and answer a criminal charge. And I don't believe Paul Slow could bring himself to a place that meet Paul Slow answering to a magistrate, because they have put themselves out there like the Pharisees and the scribes. They are the perfect ones. They're the judge of all and judge of none kind of approach. They are the standard bearers of righteousness and what is decent in society. But now people are able to bore holes in that. So it's not just Paul Slow is being charged. So the APNU AFC supporters who are getting hot under the collar and sweating is a number of police officers that are ex-police officers that are charged with this standing orders $10 million deal. It's not Paul Slow alone. Why the others are not saying the president tried to influence them?
And it's not just the Paul Slow and this group that is being charged for. This is just one of the many cases. You had people who were taking lunch money at Brickdam Police Station.
Yeah, the lunch money group, yeah. People lunch money, they had standing orders.
You have different groups who
and then you got the bail group, the people who can't come for bail money and so on. There's another group.
So I don't know who influenced them or who was trying to influence them. You know, so it's Paul Slow wants, and like you rightly said, Bishop, is to rile up the public, to use his political influence to rile up the people in the PNC and the APNU behind him. And that is why I'm saying, when I said from the onset, very soon you will hear Harman and his gang coming out to say Afro-Guyanese. They're after Afro-Guyanese. He's
But
not
if
going
it's
to say
Afro Guyanese who take the standing orders, the money to do the standing orders, and not they gonna get charged.
precisely the point.
If it's Afro Guyanese who trying to rig an election, is not they gonna get charged. If it was Afro Guyanese who take the lunch money and the food money from the police force, is who gonna get charged? Young money and charge some Amerindians? Is this a circus or a joke, or is this reality?
I don't honestly I don't know. But I want to because we're almost out of time, and I want us to deal uh, briefly, because we've been talking about what has been happening across the country. I learned that almost all the regions are experiencing flooding in some way, shape, or form. Um, I, like you, Bishop, I heard you express the sentiments, very concerned about what is happening, particularly in the Kokwani area and in the Blackbush Polo area. Those two areas seem to be hardest hit. And I made the point on several programs in the past because some are making it seem as though the heavy rainfall and the high tide is somehow the fault of the government. Apparently, the PPP decided we're going to pull all the clouds over Guyana and it's going to start raining. And we're going to ensure the tides are higher.
So we were responsible for the flooding in Suriname as well, because Suriname is flooded.
Apparently, apparently. So, but look, this is the force of nature.
And all the rivers that's swelling in Brazil is Alia Jadio.
The Amazon is swollen beyond impact.
You know,
I
Eddie, let me tell you something. I spent Saturday afternoon, Sunday, Monday in Kokwani. Today, the report I got out of Kokwani, the water is rising. We've had one of the places that we identified for a shelter, Hatururu, we had to change because the toilet facilities, even though it's a school in the high up, the toilet facilities are now flooding. Now, the water is rising. There must be something that is causing that. But you know what the APNU AFC is doing? They're putting out on social media a WhatsApp number to send video footage of flooding. They're not putting nobody in shelters. They're not providing food. They're not helping people to sanitize. They're not moving people to safety. They just would like to do public relations, blame the government game. So they are using human suffering for political purposes. And everybody must be able to condemn that kind of a behavior. We went out with the boats, with the long boots, without the long boots, in the water to get to the people, to assure them three things. Number one, your safety. So we can take you to safety. Number two, your crops is all underwater. You can't go in the back and get nothing to eat. We can make sure you got food to eat. Number three, your health concerns. We can take care of it. We ensure we have medical teams checking with all the issues of diarrhea, dysentery, and rashes. We have to ensure that waterborne diseases don't become another issue. And while we're doing all of that, we still have to ensure that we manage the COVID-19 pandemic. The APNU AFC and the naysayers and the fake news con artists on social media should be joining to ensure that our brothers and sisters in Guyana are taken care of, not use this for divisive politics. So you don't take people's plight and suffering and use it for political mileage. And we should cry shame on all those from the opposition who are using that for cheap political points. The reality is, today we have reports in other regions, the rivers are swelling. Late last night, I came up down the highway. The creeks were almost to the level of the highway. You know, those bridges that pass over the creeks, you could look down and you could see the water. Now the water is almost to the level of the bridges. At the Ashman's area, the water was on the road. Something is happening. And we got to ensure that our people are safe. So I take this opportunity, Eddie, while we're talking politics, the issue of the flood, the rainfall, and what is happening, and even the COVID-19 pandemic, there mustn't have politics inside. That is humanity. We must be our brother's keeper. We must look out for each other. We must look after each other. Make sure your neighbor is safe. put somebody in the boat, get them out to the shelter. People can't have access to toilets. The latrines are all flooded. The septic tanks are overflowing with water. We have to be able to bring solution to that. We have to get the black tanks in. We have to get the water connections in. We have to get the water purification tablets in. We got to keep people safe. And that is what President Ali and his entire cabinet and the structures across the country are doing for our people. Not playing politics, taking care of our people. We are sensitive and responsive to the needs of our people. And that's what we're doing.
And I'm happy that you got in already into that, because I wanted to, I was making the point though that, you know, despite the politics that these small-minded people in the opposition are playing, the reality is what we're experiencing is the force of nature. And you made a point there, Bishop, before I bring you in, Sanjeev, you made a point there of the water rising, and we're seeing flooding in neighboring countries, in Brazil and in Suriname. It, there has to be there has to be an issue somewhere. And what is important is the manner in which our government responded to this. This is not about blaming people. We didn't run out there to say APNU bring the water in, or APNU created the problem, or this person created the problem. The fact of the matter is, when the government learned of the flooding, the entire cabinet almost, including His Excellency, began to fan out to communities that were affected. And what happened? Bishop, you came back from you talked about coming back from Kokwani, but you didn't just go to Kokwani to see the water was in the water level was rising. You went to Kokwani to take relief items to people. Hundreds, probably
And
over.
to work with the local people to provide solutions.
Exactly the point. Three ministers were in Region 9. They weren't there to just see that there is water. They knew water was in Region 9, but they were there to ensure that they take relief to the people. The same thing is happening. The Civil Defense Commission is working 24 hours around the clock to ensure that they get to communities to provide help to people. So the response is what is important here. Sanjeev, I bring you in here.
Well, Ed, it's indeed a very serious situation with the weather. We've been getting a lot of rainfall. I'm one of those people who, from for a long time, largely due to my father, I look at these things quite frequently as a hobby. We've been getting, if you look at rain, we're far above the average. We were far above the average for May from previous years, and in this whole region, Guyana, the Guyanas, it's and unfortunately there appears to be more rain on the way. There appears to be much more rain falling in the to the south, to the east. This is going to go on. We have to help, as Minister Edghill is saying. You've got to be your brother's keeper. This is not race. This is not politics. We all, when there's politics, everybody, but we live together. We live on the same streets. We live in the same communities, the same villages, same towns. We saw the farce to which it turned out when we don't have the MNCC being as vigilant as they should be with the pump operators and the people to open the sluice gates, and they make it into a circus. Can you imagine? It took His Excellency, it took the president to get out of his home, to leave his family, to put on boots in the middle of the night, and to go walk in to check to see that the pumps are on, to see that the cokers are closed, that the cokers are open. I saw Minister Bishop um, going place to place over the weekend. I mean, I would be honest with you. For the president to get out of his bed on a Sunday night and a Saturday night to go and examine to see what is happening. But why did it become necessary for that to happen? Because for whatever reason, the MNCC and the mayor, and they want to play games about who is doing this and whether they were doing it. Listen, they weren't vigilant enough. This is a fact. Say sorry, get on with it, do better next time, get to doing what you're doing. But they want to play games. They want to play politics about it. And these things are going to continue. If we continue to have rainfall, we're going to continue to have these challenges. It's very, very serious because, as Minister Edghill pointed out, it's a serious problem when in Kwakwani, after a few days, and the rain has eased up, the water is rising. That means the water is coming from somewhere. The problem is when it starts rising there, the whole coast can expect that they will be rising. I mean, the Hope Canal that was criticized so much is pretty much the only reason Georgetown is protected. And the East
And the
Coast
East
Corridor,
Coast.
the East Coast Corridor would have been like 2005 again. If it wasn't for that canal, all of it would have been underwater. But people are struggling. Minister Edghill is right. People are struggling. And in the middle of a pandemic, you have to figure out how to get them medical supplies, how to get them cleaning. And this is not just sanitization of hands. This is cleaning to clean their houses, to clean their environment because of the flooding. When the waters move, they got to try and keep children safe. This is really, really much more serious than people are making it out to be. But you see, in one aspect, perhaps the reason the general population don't quite get it is, as is the fact that most of the people live in Georgetown and the immediate environs. And because of the Hope Canal and because of the sluice Atlantic Cane and there, and so the capital is essentially protected to a great extent. But if you go beyond, people are really struggling, and there is a lot to be done, and there is a lot that has to be done to protect them in the middle of a pandemic too, and it has to be done. And we can't play politics with this. The PPP are not responsible for the rain. If the PPP had the power to control the rain and the tides, we wouldn't need an election, brethren. We would not need elections. All right, we wouldn't have to work this hard. We wouldn't do it, wouldn't be necessary. But look at what is going on. Every single member of cabinet is all over. Even I mean, I don't want to say it in a negative way, and please don't take it in a negative way. Even my brother, the Attorney General, who is not always one to be too far off the beaten path, he's out, and he's doing his best as well.
Because
You
as a
see,
government,
the issue in a time of a national disaster or a national crisis, the issue is one of leadership.
Correct.
It starts and stops with leadership. And what Guyana is having an opportunity to see is the quality of leadership that is in office. And that leadership is what is making a difference throughout the length and breadth of Guyana. So when it's in Region 7, Madam Gail Teixeira, the Honorable Minister, is out there. When it's Region 1, you got Colin Crowell. Region 9, you have Vikram Bharat, Dharam Lal. You understand? You got along the highway, you got Minister Indar out in Region 3, Minister Manichan. People are all over, and Minister Zulfikar working with the farmers to ensure crops and cattle are taken care of, families are taken care of. I don't understand how he does it. But when we flew over with the helicopter on Saturday afternoon, see thousands of cows in the backlands, in the savannas behind Blackbush Pool, water, they have nowhere to go. We have to find ways and means of dealing with that, because the crops are going to die, the animals are going to die, the poultry industry is going to be in crisis. The economy could be affected by this. And that is why, in times like this, you need proper leadership. And I think my own perspective is that I'm proud to be part of a team that provides strong, decisive, effective, people-oriented leadership. And I think that's the strength of the PPP in the good times and in the bad times. They are there on the ground. You can't fault the PPPC leaders. They are on the ground. We are grounded with the people, and that's make a difference. We're not putting pictures to sensationalize people and to create mischief. We are on the ground working with the people to bring solutions. So the water wash away the bridges, villages are cut off. We got to get ways to get in the villages with food. Water destroy the road, people can't go. We have to get works done, restore the road, put in the culverts. The water has destroyed crops. People don't have foods. We got to get the food in. Leadership. And that is what we've been doing.
Reality is this could, because this is a natural phenomenon, and one would expect everyone, political leaders from all sides, everyone to come together to say, let's look at how together we can address the plight of the people of this country. Because the floods are not affecting supporters of the PPP alone or supporters of the PNC. The floods are affecting communities in all regions across this country. If I had my information correct, I think Region 8 now is experiencing some amount of flooding. That was the only region I think
Yes, they
that
have
was.
serious problems there now.
So every region, all 10 regions across this country, we need to rise above this. And I think, Bishop, I can tell you about the sentiments. I think the Guyanese people are very appreciative. Forget the politics of the manner in which the People's Progressive Party civic government has been dealing with this. And like you rightly said, we have a history of good leadership in and out of office. When the pandemic started, the COVID-19 pandemic, out of office, now president, then presidential candidate, started a program that the government didn't thought about to give people masks, to ensure that we provide hampers for them so that they can stay in and reduce the numbers. So the quality of leadership has always been there from the PPP. And the PPP has a group of leaders in government as ministers and as other officials in the government are following suit with the kind of leadership they're getting, is that the ministers, all of them, and I was joking with Minister Hamilton the other night, that people were saying that the man sometimes is more active than a lot of young people. Because every single minister, regardless of the hour of the night or the hour of the morning, they're out there addressing the concerns of people. And it didn't need this flood to get our ministers out in the fields. From the very first day they were appointed, they were in the fields working with people all along. So, I mean, we have to, and I'm happy that we're making inroads in terms of providing the support. The water has to be coming from somewhere. Clearly, it's something is happening somewhere because we have, like I said, neighboring countries being affected. But we want to take the opportunity too, Bishop, before we wrap up here, to encourage people. Look, there are some areas where the water would have been there for quite a while, at least a couple of days, like the Blackbush Polder and some of the other areas. And we want to encourage people to take the necessary precautions to protect your family and protect yourselves. Don't go into the water, avoid children playing in the water and so forth. The reality is we have to see how we can get the water off the land as fast as possible. But in the interim, as citizens, we have to play our part. And we want to encourage people also you know, to reach out to the Civil Defense Commission. I wanted to share the numbers here. The Civil Defense Commission on 226 1117, 226 1117, or 600 7500. 600 7500. Also, persons, if you're experiencing any illnesses that seem to be as a result of the water, stagnant water in your area, whatever, feel free to get in contact with the nearest health center. We already have the COVID-19 pandemic to deal with. We don't want people to complicate the situation more. And very often, us as citizens have to blame ourselves. We know the right thing, but for some reason or the other, we always find ourselves, taking risks. So we want to encourage people not to take risks, and to reach out to the Civil Defense Commission. Be rest assured that once you reach out to the Civil Defense Commission, there will be response not only from that agency but from the government. From the ministers, the various ministries, they're going to respond to whether it's your farm, whether it's your poultry, whether it's your family in a sad situation as a result of the flooding. This is a government for the people, and we are going to make every effort to get to people wherever they are. I'm going to give both Bishop, I'm going to go with you first, Sanjeev, and then Bishop. 2 minutes to give your closing comments.
Thanks, Eddie. I just want to say, look, the flooding is a serious thing. We have to all pull together, be careful, look after yourselves. I want to take just a moment to remind everybody as well. It's been published now. There have been more than 200,000 people vaccinated. Everyone, please get vaccinated. Those of you who've had your first shot of vaccines, get your second shot of vaccines as well. This is our path out of this pandemic. Some of us know Mr. Mondale Smith. Some of us have no other persons who have been affected by this. COVID is not a joke. The other waterborne diseases that might be the dysentery, the diarrhea, the other issues that might come with the flooding are also nothing to take lightly. Look after yourselves. This is just focus on looking after yourself, trying to get to be safe for the pandemic, trying to get clean water. Don't take chances. Don't take risks. Get vaccinated. Please, this is our path.
Bishop.
Yes, Eddie, I'd want to take this opportunity to salute the Civil Defense Commission, the Prime Minister, who is the sector minister and cabinet member who oversees the Civil Defense Commission, the Director General, and the other staff and volunteers of the Civil Defense Commission. They have been doing a fantastic job. I have seen their response time to be so swift. I can give you an example. We visited Kukwani Saturday afternoon, and by 24 hours, 4 trucks arrived in Kukwani with supplies. Packed on Saturday night, departed Georgetown early Sunday morning, and was in Kukwani by Sunday afternoon. Swiftness, sacrifice, and going beyond the call of duty. Sometimes we don't take time enough to appreciate the people who really work hard in these times. So I would want to convey my deep appreciation to the Civil Defense Commission and the proactive leadership of Prime Minister Mark Phillips, who is giving oversight to that department. Secondly, I was present with His Excellency and the President and the Vice President and the Prime Minister when His Excellency reached out to the leadership of every region of Guyana on Friday afternoon. He personally put through that call to all the regions to get not only the Civil Defense Commission's report, but the elected representatives and the administrators of those regions to say what are their needs, what assistance they need, how could we best serve them. And that showed the inclusive nature of this response. And we want to keep it that way. We want to be able to have a people's response, a Guyana's response, a collective response, reaching our Guyanese brothers and sisters. Don't let us use the flood for political mileage and political gain. This is a time to ensure that all of our people are safe. I'm happy so far. There's no reported deaths as a result of flood. We have to watch the waterborne diseases. We have to boil the water. We got to take care of the utensils. Even when people are going to be accommodated in shelters, we have the added situation because now it's COVID-19. You just can't cluster people in the shelters. And that's one of the reasons why I want to commend the CDC, the evacuations they've had to do, how they've had to put families. And it's a tremendous job. And we got to be careful. We got to look out for each other. but ensure that you all protect yourself. And I join with Sanjeev in asking all Guyanese, go and get vaccinated. Get your first shot. If you got your first shot, go back and get your second shot. We're going to make it together. We're going to get out of this together. All the pump attendants, the sluice operators, the men and women operating the excavators, and those who have to dig, and all the rest of it. Please, let's do a good job. Let's be conscientious. Let's save the lives. Let's save the crops. Let's save the animals. Let's save Guyana. And let us get on with it and keep Guyana moving. We are poised for greatness. Greatness will come our way. Thank you, Eddie, for having me. Sanjeev, it's always a pleasure sharing the program with you.
Always a pleasure, Minister Edghill. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, gentlemen, and thanks to our viewers who would have been with us for the last hour and 15 minutes. We went 15 minutes beyond this evening, and I'm happy that we were able to share all the information that we could have. So again, gentlemen, thanks for being here, and to our viewers, we want to say thanks for watching. We're going to be back with you tomorrow evening.